So um, I want you to picture a scenario. It's a Tuesday morning. You're an executive at a mid-sized growing company. You walk into your headquarters.
Right.
You see the turnstiles spinning. You see the guards in the sharp uniforms. You see the cameras blinking in the corners.
The whole setup.
Exactly. The whole setup. And you know exactly how much you pay for all of this because, well, you signed the budget approvals. And let's be honest, that number isn't small.
Oh, it's usually one of the biggest line items in facilities or operations. I mean, it's a serious investment.
Right. It's massive. But then something happens, a weird interaction in the lobby. Or a door is propped open that definitely shouldn't be. Maybe a protest starts forming outside.
Yeah.
And suddenly, despite all that gear and all that payroll, there is this panic.
The scramble.
Yes, the scramble. People are running around. Phone calls are being made to people who are, on vacation. And you get this sinking feeling that despite the expensive parts, nobody actually knows how the machine works.
And that feeling, that exact feeling, is the reason we are looking at this stack of documents today. We're doing a deep dive into the foundational security architecture, or the FSA.
Right.
Specifically, we're looking at a set of documents known as the FSA 90 Executive Briefing.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, this isn't a tech review. We aren't going to sit here and talk about which camera had the best zoom or which badge reader is the fastest.
Not at all. I mean, this is an executive diagnostic. The central thesis of these documents is fascinating. It argues that most companies suffer from what they call the illusion of having security.
The illusion.
Right. You have the assets, the guards, the tech, the policies in a binder somewhere, but you don't have the actual architecture. So when pressure hits, the structure drifts.
Structural drift. That is the headline concept here. And honestly, it sounds a bit like a geological term, like tectonic plates moving.
It's not far off. The idea is that the ground under your security program is slowly eroding, but you don't notice it until there's an earthquake. If you're a leader, this is really going to resonate. The documents explain why security departments fall apart as companies grow and exactly how to fix it without burning the whole thing down.
I think that illusion of security concept is going to hit a nerve with a lot of people. Because as an executive, it feels like a gut punch. You think you're safe because you wrote a check.
Exactly. But writing a check buys you parts. It doesn't buy you a system. And that's the governance gap we need to explore today.
So let's start with the diagnosis. The briefing opens with this concept of growth shock, which, I don't know, sounds like something that happens to a teenager. But in this context, what are we talking about?
Think about how a small company handles security. You have one office. You have a security manager. Let's call him Bob.
Okay, Bob.
Bob knows everyone. He knows the CEO's car. He knows which door sticks in the winter. He knows who works late. If there's a problem, the receptionist just yells, "Hey, Bob!" And Bob fixes it.
The Bob system. It works great. It's personal. It's immediate.
It works perfectly. It's efficient. It's fast. But here is the trap. It relies entirely on memory and relationships. Bob remembers what to do. The receptionist relies on their relationship with Bob.
But then the company succeeds. You scale.
Right. Now you have 20 sites. You have offices in London, Singapore, Austin. You have 3 different guard vendors. You have regulatory requirements. You cannot clone Bob.
You can try, but HR usually has rules against that.
Usually. So you have a situation where the scale of the company has outpaced the memory of the staff.
Wow, yeah.
The organization hasn't built a system to replace Bob's brain. That is growth shock. You are trying to run a complex enterprise using the informal habits of a startup.
And the briefing says the result of this is reactive control management, which basically sounds like professional firefighting to me.
It's exactly that. The documents list the symptoms, and they are painfully familiar. One of the big ones is inconsistent escalation.
What does that look like in practice? Because I imagine most executives think their teams handle things the exact same way everywhere.
They wish. In practice, it means an incident at your warehouse in Ohio is handled completely differently than the exact same incident at your office in New York.
Right.
In Ohio, they might call the police immediately for a minor trespass. In New York, they might just log it in a notebook and go home. There is no common language.
So the CEO finds out about the Ohio thing instantly, but doesn't hear about the New York thing for 3 weeks.
If ever. And that leads to the second symptom informational KPIs. You get a monthly report that says, we had 5 incidents.
Okay. Is that good? Is that bad?
Precisely. Did we fix the root cause? Are we safer than last month? Without structure, it's just data without consequence. You're just counting fires, not preventing them.
There's a section here that dissects the internal politics of this drift. It talks about the tribes of security. You've got the operations people, the ones dealing with the guards, and then the risk people. We're usually staring at spreadsheets.
And never the twain shall meet.
The briefing calls this the governance gap. But it proposes a solution that I found really interesting. It's a strict distinction between mandate and inform. Can we unpack that? Because I feel like in most companies, everyone is trying to do both.
This is arguably the most critical architectural concept in the FSA. It's the brain versus the nerves.
Okay, I like that analogy. Go on.
In a drifting organization, these roles are muddy. You might have a risk analyst who spots a vulnerability, say a weak door lock, and they decide to write a new policy to fix it themselves.
Right.
Or you have an operations manager who decides a certain risk isn't a big deal, so they tell the guards to just ignore the protocol.
So you have analysts giving orders and operators making risk decisions.
Chaos. The FSA structure separates them cleanly. Risk informs. Their job is to be the nerves. They sense the environment, they spot the threats, they tell you what the exposure is, they provide the data.
But they don't make the rules.
No. Governance mandates. Governance is the brain, usually the executive layer or a specific committee. They look at the data from risk and say, okay, based on that information, here is the rule we are enforcing.
That distinction seems subtle, but I can see how it completely changes the power dynamic.
It cures analysis paralysis. Without this split, you get risk teams debating operations teams endlessly. With the split, risk provides the map and governance steers the ship. It stops the arguments because everyone knows their exact role.
So if that's the theory, let's talk about the structure. The source material outlines a four-pillar architecture: governance, risk, operational assurance, and technical design. We could spend an hour on each, but the briefing is adamant you do not start with the tech.
Never start with the tech. You start with pillar 1, governance, specifically stabilizing authority.
This brings up an acronym that everyone in corporate life has heard and most people secretly hate: the RCI matrix. Responsible, accountable, consulted, informed.
I know. It sounds like pure bureaucracy.
So it's like a meeting about having a meeting.
But in security, the documents argue it's a survival tool. It's not about checking boxes. It's about decision rights.
What's the difference?
Imagine a guard finds a suspicious package in your lobby. Who has the authority to evacuate the building? Is it the guard, the receptionist, the site manager, the director of security, the CEO?
In a growth shot company, everyone is just looking at everyone else.
Right. And while they are looking at each other, the clock is ticking. The FSA approach says you must lock down these decision rights before the package shows up.
Yeah.
If you don't know who can declare a level 4 incident, you don't actually have a security program. You just have people standing around hoping someone else takes the blame.
You mentioned level 4. This segues perfectly into the mechanics of control. The briefing introduces this level 1 to 5 enterprise severity model. Now, I've seen high, medium, low scales a million times. Why is this 1 to 5 model different?
Because it's rigid. The source material is very strict here. It must be mandatory and non-negotiable across the entire enterprise. No local flavors. A level 3 has to mean the exact same thing in Tokyo as it does in Toronto.
Why is that rigidity so important? Can't local teams decide what's important to them based on their environment?
That's how you get drift. The problem isn't a language barrier between English and Japanese, it's a language barrier between site manager and executive. If a site manager thinks a protest is a minor issue because they see it every day, but the executive thinks it's a reputational crisis, you have a massive disconnect.
So the model forces them to agree on the math.
Exactly. It forces alignment from top to bottom.
Give us an example. What is a level 3 in this world?
In the FSA model, a level 3 is typically a significant security breach that is contained. A theft attempt where the person was caught. A physical altercation in the lobby. It's serious. It requires immediate notification to senior leadership.
Versus a level 1?
Level 1 is a log entry. Door didn't close properly. Light bulb out. Data, but definitely not an emergency.
And a level 5?
Crisis. Active threat. Mass casualty. Total site loss. The turn on the news level.
This connects directly to the escalation matrix, which, again, sounds like a corporate buzzword, but the briefing treats it almost like a legal contract.
It is a contract. It's the tool that saves careers.
How so?
Because it removes the ambiguity of bother.
The ambiguity of bother. I like that.
You know the feeling. It's Friday at 4:30 p.m. Something weird happens. It's not a disaster, but it's not nothing either. Do you call the VP? Do you ruin their weekend, or do you handle it and just hope it doesn't blow up?
That is the worst feeling in the world as a manager.
The escalation matrix kills that feeling. It says, if this is a level 3, you must notify these 3 people via a phone call within 15 minutes.
It completely takes the personality out of it.
Completely. You aren't bothering the boss. You are executing the protocol. It protects the operator from being hesitant, and it protects the executive from being blindsided.
There's another concept in the mechanics section that I found really clever, bordering on brilliant, honestly. The Incident Master Index. The idea is that we shouldn't just log events. We should log policy failures.
This is the real nugget of the deep dive for me. It's a subtle shift that changes everything. Usually, incident reports are just descriptions of reality. Man walked through
The water leaked on his floor.
Right. The FSA argues that every incident is actually a data point about a specific policy.
Walk us through how that changes the report in real life.
Sure. Take an unauthorized visitor. Someone tailgates through a turnstile behind an employee.
Sure.
In a reactive system, you log unauthorized visitor, the guard kicks them out, and you move on.
You treated the symptom.
Exactly. In the FSA Policy First taxonomy, that incident is linked specifically to the visitor access policy or the anti-tailgating rule.
So you aren't just saying something happened. You're saying rule number 4 was broken.
Yes, and here's why that matters. If you see 10 unauthorized visitor incidents in a week, you don't just say, we have a lot of intruders. You say, our visitor access policy is failing.
It forces you to look at the rule itself, not just the isolated event.
It connects the incident back to the governance. It tells you what to fix. Maybe the rule is too hard to follow. Maybe the turnstiles are too slow. It turns incidents into actual diagnostic data.
That makes so much sense. It stops you from just swiping at flies and forces you to actually close the window.
Right.
Now, speaking of checking if the window is closed, let's talk about audits.
Try to contain your excitement.
I'm trying. But the briefing actually rebrands audit. It calls it drift detection, which sounds a lot cooler.
Audit sounds like accounting. It sounds like a guy with a clipboard checking if you have a flashlight. Drift detection is active. It asks, is the architecture holding up or is it eroding?
And it introduces this concept of control baselines.
You don't wait for the car to crash to check the brakes. You measure the stopping distance. Drift governance is measuring the subtle slip. Our escalation time's creeping up. Last month, we reported level 3s in 15 minutes. This month, it's taking 25. That's drift. We haven't failed yet, but we are slipping.
But what happens when you find a slip? Because in my experience, audit reports usually go into a drawer and die.
That is the theater of security. The FSA solves this with consequence management.
Sounds ominous.
It needs to be. The report literally says, without consequence, audits are just theater. If you find a gap, say, guards aren't doing the patrol verification, that's a finding. It gets classified. Minor, major, critical, it gets an owner. And it gets a hard due date.
And here's the kicker from the notes. If they miss the due date, it escalates.
Right up to the governance committee. It becomes a visibility issue for the executives. It forces the organization to fix the hole or formally admit they are accepting the risk. You can't just ignore it and hope the auditor forgets next year.
Okay, so we've got the diagnosis with growth shock. We've got the architecture with the pillars and escalation. We've got the detection mechanism with audits. But if I'm listening to this and I'm that executive, I'm thinking, this sounds massive. I can't pause my company for 2 years to build this Death Star of security.
And that is exactly why the FSA 90 document exists. The 90 stands for 90 days. It's the stabilization blueprint.
The emergency room approach.
Effectively, it's designed for a new security director or an executive reset. It says, forget the 200-page manual for a second. We need to stabilize the patient. It breaks it down into 3 30-day phases.
Without getting into the weeds of every single day, let's run through the high-level strategy.
Yep.
Phase 1, the first 30 days. What's the mission?
Stabilize authority. Stop the ambiguity. In the first 30 days, you are not worried about camera angles. You are publishing the RCI matrix. You are locking in that level 1 to 5 severity scale we talked about. And you are publishing the escalation matrix.
You're drawing the lines in the sand.
You're answering the question, who is in charge? By day 30, no one in the organization should ever ask, do I need to report this? Or who do I call? That is the foundational step. It sounds simple, but you'd be amazed how many organizations can't answer that question clearly.
Okay, the bleeding is stopped. Phase 2, the next 30 days. Install discipline.
Now that we know who's in charge, we need to know how we're performing. This is where we turn on the lights. We deploy guard KPIs, activity, quality, reliability.
This moves us away from Bob as a good guy to actual data.
Exactly. Did you verify the patrol points? Was your incident report complete? We move from anecdotal performance to data-driven performance. We stand up the first real dashboard.
So by day 60, we have data. We can actually see the drift on a screen.
Which leads to phase 3, the final 30 days, institutionalize. This is where we close the loop.
And this is where the briefing mentions micro drills, which I think is my favorite concept in the whole stack.
It's brilliant. Instead of doing one massive training day once a year that everyone sleeps through, you do micro drills on shift.
How does that work?
A supervisor walks up to a guard on a Tuesday morning and says, okay, hypothetical level 3, suspicious package in the lobby. You have 30 seconds. What are your first 3 moves?
Keeps them on their toes.
It builds muscle memory. It turns policy into reflex. And crucially, phase 3 introduces the AAR trigger. Every level 3 or higher incident must trigger an after-action review.
So we don't just file the report and forget it.
Never. You sit down and ask, did the system work? If not, you change the training, and that feeds directly back into the micro drills.
And the loop closes. That's the reset. In 90 days, you haven't fixed everything, but you have fundamentally moved from chaos to a governed system.
And that is the shift from security as a cost center to security as a governed system.
That's the real executive value, right, when you go to the board.
It is. When you walk into that board meeting, you aren't asking for money because we feel unsafe. You are showing them a dashboard. You're showing them, here is our control baseline. Here is where we are drifting. Here is the exact investment needed to correct the drift.
It makes security defensible. It speaks the language of the business.
It stops being about fear and starts being about management.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought from the text that really stuck with me. It's a question about the very foundation of your company. The text asks, does your organization rely on memory, people remembering what to do, or structure a system that tells them what to do?
Because memory fails under stress. Structure holds up.
And structure is the only thing that survives growth.
That's the reality. You can run a mom-and-pop shop on memory. You cannot run an enterprise on it.
If you're listening to this and realizing your security program is running on the memory of 3 people who've been there for 10 years, it might be time for a diagnostic. Yep. Check your drift.
Check the baseline.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive today. We'll see you on the next one.